is a show with over 20 years of history, all covering the same period of time, Peppa's 4 years of life. But even though we've been stuck in this time loop for over 20 years, it's strange to see that other characters actually have a childhood. Do you know which ones? Something I was noticing the other day while watching Peppa Pig during lunch at the construction site was that we are trapped in a time loop. Not us in real life, but the characters in the show. But everyone already figured that out, right? We all know that for the past 20 years, Peppa has remained 4 years old, even though she has celebrated her birthday multiple times and gone through countless Christmas episodes. Time works differently here, but if we are stuck in a loop, always staying the same age as time moves forward, then how is it possible that other characters age, except for Peppa, George, and their friends? This started catching my attention in the episode Playstar, when it shows that Daddy and Mummy Pig were little piglets, just like Peppa in the past. They even went to the same school as Peppa and had the same teacher, Madame Gazelle, who hasn't aged a single day since then. Another guy from the construction crew even stopped carrying his cement bags to point out how weird it is that time seems to have stopped for everyone ever since Peppa was born. But is that true? Could it be that Clean Boots Kyle has just inhaled too much brick dust? That's why we all stopped what we were doing to analyze everything we know about this universe's past and see if Peppa really is the reason time has stopped. So grab your time machines, because today we're going to investigate Peppa Pig's timeline here on Zigzag. As we just mentioned, Madame Gazelle, whom we know today as Peppa's teacher, was also Daddy and Mummy Pig's teacher in the past. Since she was already an adult back then, I think it's safe to assume that the oldest point in these characters' timeline can be traced back to her. In the episode Madame Gazelle's House, we are introduced to a bizarre concept. A tree, planted a long time ago, was responsible for tilting the exotic accented teacher's house, making everyone slide like they were on a playground slide as soon as they stepped inside. Things already start getting weird at this point, right? It gets even stranger when she tells the story of the past, and we see that before she planted the tree in her yard, she already looked the same age as she does now. So, considering that Daddy Pig is around 30 years old and that a tree can take up to 20 years to fully grow, we can estimate that this flashback took place 50 years ago, since she herself said it was a long time ago. It's important to establish this for a specific reason. We know that time used to move forward. Do you get it? 50 years ago, a tree was planted. Then time passed until it reached its current size. Then Daddy Pig was born, lived his entire life, became an adult, and eventually became Peppa's father. And after Peppa was born, 20 more years passed, yet she is still the same age. Do you see how this theory makes total sense for Peppa being the reason time stopped moving forward? If you're enjoying this theory, type #loop in the comments. Another piece of evidence that time used to move forward is that other characters also had a childhood in the past. We know this because, in the Playstar episode, besides Daddy Pig, we also see Mummy Pig standing next to him. In other words, they went to school together at Madame Gazelle's kindergarten, which still exists today. Sometimes, when we are in time loops, it becomes difficult to tell what is real and what is not, what actually happened, or what is just the result of some scientific anomaly that I wouldn't be able to explain. After all, I'm just a construction worker who happens to be a Peppa Pig fan. Clean Boots. Kyle has no idea either, but the important thing is to analyze whether there are other pieces of evidence proving that the past existed in this world, and there are. Besides seeing Mummy Pig's childhood in the Playstar episode, we know she was once a little piglet because of another episode called Grandpa Pig's Computer. In this episode, the family goes to Grandpa Pig's house because Mummy Pig wants to give him her old computer to help him get more organized and keep himself busy, as he enjoys technology and tinkering with gadgets. In this scene, we can see a picture frame in the background with two characters, a girl, clearly, since she's wearing a dress with little flowers, and a boy with a bow tie. The girl is obviously Mummy Pig because the dress is identical to the one she wears in the Playstar episode. It has to be her because we are in her parents' house. So, naturally, they would have a picture of her as a child. But this is where the answers end, and more questions arise. Do you see it? Mummy Pig doesn't have brothers. We know she has a sister, Aunt Dottie, who appears in the Thanksgiving episode, but other than that, we don't know of any other siblings. So who the heck is this little pig standing next to her in the childhood photo? Man, seriously, this kind of mystery drives me crazy because the questions it raises are way too hard to answer. Don't believe me? Then check this out. In the episode Daddy Pig's Birthday, we have two important points about the time loop. First, we might be tricked into thinking that time is actually passing. After all, Daddy Pig is celebrating a birthday, so that means a year has gone by, right? Wrong! This is the only birthday episode he has in the entire 20-year history of the show. There's one birthday episode for each major character as well, like Mummy Pig and even Peppa herself. So in 20 years of the show, every character has only celebrated their birthday once. Keep this information in mind for later. We'll come back to it. But the main point of Daddy Pig's birthday episode is this scene in his office, which proves how the timeline is completely glitched. Look at the photo on his desk. It's the same photo that Grandpa and Granny Pig have of Mummy Pig and her brother. Why would he have a photo of his wife as a piglet on his desk? Man, this is weird. On a level I can't even put into words, which is why it can only be some kind of glitch in the Matrix. And if we were to argue that the picture is actually of Daddy Pig and his sister, we'd end up with the same result as if it were Mummy Pig and her brother. She doesn't have a brother, just like Daddy Pig doesn't have a sister. He has a brother. Did your brain just melt too? Then cool it off by clicking the subscribe button. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you can be brought back to reality every time a new video drops. You're not alone. Your head isn't the only one spinning. The entire internet has already had the same thoughts that Roberval and I did. And the producers of Peppa Pig have given us an official answer. Time seems to stand still in Peppa Pig because over the past 20 years, a little over 300 episodes have been made, and each episode represents a single day in Peppa's life. And okay, that explanation kind of makes sense, but then you stop and think for another 5 seconds and remember that they've celebrated Christmas more than 5 times already. And that's just counting the episodes I can remember off the top of my head. I know there are even more. Where in the world do people celebrate Christmas more than once a year? But okay, you could still argue that all of those episodes were about the same Christmas Eve and not 5 different Christmases. Except then, you remember the episode where they travel to Australia to celebrate Christmas with Kylie Kangaroo, and suddenly, the whole explanation collapses. There's no way they did all of that in one night and then arrived in Australia the next day to celebrate Christmas again in the same year. Sure, Australia is upside down, and maybe time works differently there, but even so, we have to consider that in this 1 year, the producers are talking about they celebrated Christmas twice. As much as I love the idea of watching Die Hard 2 days in a row, having multiple Christmases in just 1 year of Peppa's life just doesn't make sense. That's why the show must take place in a time loop, because every existing explanation fails to answer all the questions and just ends up creating even more. That's why the cause of the time loop can only be either Peppa's birth, since time was moving normally before, as the adults were born and grew older, or Peppa's last birthday, when the 4-year mark was reached and everything stopped. Or, who knows? Maybe it's some other strange anomaly that caused all of this, like this second Peppa we see in this image.